What the bleep is happening in Sudan? Why are bioweapons labs now unsecured? The World Health Organization is warning that biolabs in Sudan are this is their quote, huge biological risk because Sudanese fighters have seized at least one biolab in the capital of Khartoum. Now, where have we heard this before? War zone, biolab, escaped virus. This is very familiar from the not too distant past in Ukraine. The biolabs we're talking about right now, there's just one in particular. It's called the National Public Health Laboratory in Khartoum. Who is behind this lab? Well, hard to say, because take a look at their website when you click the About Me page.
Page not found.
Interesting.
That's a great website from like 1997.
Yes.
Like built with a Netscape browser or something.
Speaking of 1997, I searched this in the Wayback Machine to see what did it say before this error code. Is it recent? Was something pulled down because of this compromise of the lab? It seems that this error code has been there since at least 2019, but I can't really be sure because the Wayback Machine is kind of slow and hard to use. But I could tell at least that it's not a recent removal of something. But the homepage does list partners such as the World Health Organization, Brazil, China, Japan, the United Arab Emirates, Save the Children, the World Bank, the United Nations, and the UN World Food Program, just to name a few. So more on this lab in just a minute, but let's just back up and talk about what is happening in Sudan, because fighting has been raging for several weeks. And on Monday, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia brokered a 72-hour ceasefire in Sudan. Seems to be holding up, but the WHO is now saying that one side of the fighting parties control this biolab that holds samples of cholera, measles, polio, and other infectious diseases. They're not saying which side. Here is Nima Saeed Abid, who the WHO representative in Sudan, telling us exactly what he's worried about with these labs.
That is extremely, extremely dangerous because we have polio isolates in the lab, we have measles isolates on the lab, we have cholera isolates in the lab. So there is a huge biological risk.
Oh, great.
Sounds good. It was a news piece that added that music, not me. I don't need to get any more dramatic than what he already said. Doesn't need dramatic music. It's already bad. Philip, who's worked in labs, do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Do you like polio?
I have no particular love of polio or cholera, but I mean the research that goes on in these biolabs is usually very necessary. It's like got public health in mind. Having them fall into the wrong hand is extremely dangerous because some of the most dangerous things on the planet are in there. Dangerous to humans.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like these biolabs are scary places if they're not rigidly controlled.
And we set them up. It's odd, right, that we set these things up in these countries that we destabilize. It's amazing why, Ukraine has 46 biolabs that are funded in large part by the United States government. And of course, we've tracked and trailed to Hunter Biden as well on this and his involvement in this. Just Jenny wrote on our YouTube page earlier today, one of our viewers, Just Jenny, and said, is it any coincidence that Sudanese rebels have taken over a biolab with the very polio viruses that Bill Gates has said will compromise the next pandemic or comprise the next pandemic?
It doesn't feel coincidental.
No.
But nothing does anymore. So, who and what were in that lab and how long have these biolabs been working with all of these other countries? We're going to get back to that in a minute. But first, a little bit about this conflict. Here is Kenyan writer and activist David John Bwakali. He boils down the conflict, I think, far better than I could. So I'm going to leave it to him to explain exactly what's going on in Sudan right now.
Here is why you should care about the fighting that is going on in Sudan. What's happening there is more than meets the eye, and it's time for the world to discuss the actual truth of what is going on there. America and Russia are at it again, just as they did 60 years ago during the Cold War when they fought proxy wars right here in Africa, leading to the death of thousands of innocent Africans. They are at it again in Sudan, fighting a proxy war. Let me explain. Two factions of the Sudanese military are fighting each other. One of them is led by Lieutenant General Mohammed Hamdan, head of the paramilitary group known as Rapid Support Forces. The other faction is led by the Sudanese Army Chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. So why are they fighting? This is where Russia and USA come into the picture. You see, in the last couple of months, Russia has finalized a deal with Sudan to establish Russia's naval base in Sudan's Red Sea coast. America is not too happy with that. Actually, they're furious. America's ambassador to Sudan, John Godfrey, expressly warned Sudan not to seal that deal with Russia, but they're going ahead and doing just that. And so when the paramilitary unit began fighting the other faction of the army, that wasn't happening in a vacuum. The big problem is that you're not going to hear this in the mainstream media. Neither are you going to hear a lot of African governments voicing this, which is very unfortunate because Africa must learn to speak its truth and stand on this truth, because truth will set you free. So it is left to the African people, we the African people, to speak this truth and tell America and Russia to get off Africa, to get their hands off Africa. The days of the Cold War, the days of the shenanigans of the Cold War are completely over, and they cannot fight proxy wars in Africa at the expense of innocent African lives. That has to stop. The fighting in Sudan must stop. The puppet masters must stop their evil, diabolic games.